Hi, my name's Cecilia Poullain, and welcome to this episode of Brave New Women. All around the world, there are amazing, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Brave New Women is about giving those women a platform and a voice, and it's about changing the way that women are perceived. And it's a way of inspiring all of us to do the things that we've always wanted to do. I'm so pleased today to be sitting down to talk to Anjani Amriit. Anjani is English, but she's been living in Sydney for a long time. And she is the founder of a global business called Women with Purpose. She describes herself as a self-actualization specialist. And by that, she means that she works with her clients, so women leaders, business owners, and executives. And she helps them tap into their inner wisdom so that they can realize their highest leadership and career potential and their life purpose. So welcome, Anjani.
Thank you, and thank you for having me today. It's a real honor to be here.
Anjani, can you tell me, what is a self-actualization specialist?
Yes, a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But basically, I help women, mainly women, but men also, reach their highest level of development. So that's on a mental level, and physical level, an emotional level, and also a soul level or energy level. And it's where we can then reach our personal greatest potential once we've gotten through the striving phases of our life, and we're meeting all of our basic psychological needs and physical needs. Then we can move into a deeper place of potential, and that's where I come in and help people. And that could be overcoming past traumas or health problems or seeming failures, to help them then move into realizing their greatest vision for whatever's they're waiting to step into. What they're looking for in this life.
Wow, so that's a pretty big mission.
It is quite a big remit, yes.
And can you tell me a bit about how you came to be running or creating your company? What sort of things did you need to do, and have you experienced that have meant that you have the capabilities to run such a company?
Yes, I went through this myself. So being a reformed lawyer, I like to call myself a reformed lawyer, worked as a lawyer for nearly 2 decades. And I really was not doing very well physically and emotionally and mentally. And so I started to look at alternative ways of wellness, fitness, mental health, emotional health. And through my own journey, really, it led me to studying with various alternative holistic methods that really spoke to me in a way that the law never did, and brought a lot of meaning and fulfillment to me, and had me thriving easily and effortlessly, whereas previously with law, it was a bit of a slog for me. Even though I was super successful, it was hard work and effort, whereas the alternative things that I was studying and started to practice just came the most easy and naturally to me. So now that I do that with other people as my work, it's not like work, because it's just the most natural thing for me. And that's really what I help other people do. It's find their natural gifts and talents, tap into their inner wisdom so that they can bring that into their lives.
So can you just tell me a little bit about the moment when you realized that law wasn't for you and that you needed something else? Can we just dig down into that time of your life a little bit further?
Yes. I want to say later on in my career, but I have to admit that it was very early on. Like, as soon as I started studying, I knew that it wasn't going to be a forever thing for me. But I'd committed to it, so I wanted to see it through. And I'd gotten into law because I wanted to do good in the world. My heart's always been to serve other people and help other people, and I thought I could do that in law. And it became quickly apparent that that wasn't really the way in which I could personally do it. I'm not, saying anything about the law. It's a great institution. It just isn't and wasn't for me. But it was about a decade into my career, and I just looked around me and realized that there was more to my life than what I was doing, even though I had all the outside trappings. And I actually went to a meditation class that someone had recommended for me to help me with my anxiety that had been building. I'd had lots of anxiety and would suffer panic attacks at work. And so I went to this meditation class, and I'd never been to a meditation class, never even been to a yoga studio. It was held in a yoga studio, and it was terrifying for me. All the flip-flops, the thongs were on the floor outside, and I'd come in my designer heels and my tight skirt, and I'd tiptoed up the stairs and saw all these kind of tie-dye wearing people with long hair, and I felt so out of place. And yet I got to the top of the stairs and I locked eyes with what turned out to be the teacher. And we both had this instant recognition of each other, like I'd never experienced before. We both recognized each other, even though we hadn't met before. And during the meditation, it was like someone switched the light on, and I saw into other realms. I was surrounded in gold light, and I couldn't wipe the smile off my face for 3 days. It was like I was in this heightened state of bliss for 3 days. And I had no idea what was happening to me. It was like I'd taken drugs, and I'd never take it. I'm not good at any kind of stimulants. I had half a Bouroki once and it didn't end well. So for me, it was a massive shift that day. And that really was the turning point, because I saw that there was more to life than what I'd been living, that I couldn't put my finger on, but I had experienced it. And it was that experience that shifted my whole life, really, from then on. I was just in search of more of that.
And is that a unique experience that you had in that meditation studio, or have you heard of other people having that sort of experience when they first come to meditation?
It's different for everyone. So it's the same as anything in life. I've heard of people having similar experiences and even more profound experiences than that. And there are other people who try to meditate for the first time and it's just the worst. It's the worst feeling and it's uncomfortable. And, they'll say, I feel worse now after meditating. So it's all different. It depends on the level of the soul's development from other lives when they're coming to something like this. And that's the marker, really. And that's an intangible. We can't touch it, see it, smell it, or taste it. But it's evident when we try or start to meditate or do anything like that. It's evident. If it comes naturally, then there's a lot of soul development there in that person. So it's different for everyone.
So when you say that it's soul development from another life, so it means that your soul in another life had been very well developed, and so that once you came to meditation, it was a natural place for you to be. Is that
I don't want to sound like I'm blowing my own trumpet, so let's just say that I'd done some work in some area that led me to have a profound experience and led me to instantly have lots of insights into the non-physical world in terms of my psychic ability turned on overnight, switched on overnight, and my sense of hearing switched on overnight, so I could hear things and know things. So the clairsentience and the clairaudience, that kind of just all switched on as a result of that. And that was something that I had to then get training in, because it was like being given something, but like given a new car, but then having no idea how to, like getting a new phone. I've recently got a new phone. And it's like, I don't even know how to use this phone. It's got all the bells and whistles, but I have no idea how to use it. So it was a bit like that for me. And then, I had to train to learn how to use it. And most importantly, how to respect it and how to stay humble with it as well.
And what is it exactly? So it's clairaudience and clair.
They're called the clairs. Yes, there's 5 or so of them where it's senses beyond the physical senses. So you can smell things that aren't physically there. You can hear things that aren't physically there. You can see things that aren't physically there. You can know things that aren't physically there. So there's different clairs or psychic abilities. And then there's the perception of a person's blueprint, their life blueprint for this life, past lives, past experiences, past memories that can also be seen if you know how to do it.
And how was it for you discovering that you had those abilities?
It was the most extraordinary and yet normal thing at the same time, which sounds like a juxtaposition, but that's how it was for me. It was just like nothing I'd ever heard about before, and yet the most natural to me. It was like I was remembering something that I'd known before. That's the only way I can explain it. Mm-hmm. And it was hard, coming from a very logical, rational, I was a corporate M&A lawyer, that you can't get more logical, rational, pragmatic, down to earth than that. And I find that helps when I'm working with clients today to know that I had a long career as a lawyer. And the work that I do today is very sacred. It's very deep. And it's not something that it's a hobby or anything like that, or woo-woo. It's very sacred work.
Mm. And so when you're working with clients, how do those abilities that you have, how do you, what is it? How do you experience?
You're really outing me today, Cecilia. You have this way about you. You're outing. I feel like I'm being outed fully in a way that I haven't before, but that's fine.
Well, tell me if it's getting too close to the bone.
It's all good. I work very intuitively with clients. So we work on a intuitive level, but also a pragmatic level as well. And it's about bringing practical wisdom to a client's wishes and desires. But typically I will and can see the blueprint for every client that I work with. And so I have a sense of their greater purpose and what they came here for, not the specifics, but a sense of it. And then that we work towards unfolding that with the client. So the client starts to get these realizations themselves. And that's through peeling away the layers of trauma or beliefs or programs or mindsets or emotional blockages, so that then the real person starts to shine from the inside out. And all the work that I do is really, I call it an inside job. It's looking at how we manage the business of the self and all parts of the self, so that we can realize for ourselves what our power and gifts are, and then create strategies and plans and goals to make that a physical reality for them.
Mm-hmm. And have you got, you may not be able to answer this because of confidentiality, but have you got particular examples of clients who have developed beyond what you could have ever expected?
I have to say every single one of my clients do that. And it's just, that's why I say this work is a privilege to do, because it is always beyond expectations, always way more magnificent, way more amazing, way more miraculous than a client first imagines when they come to work with me. And that's the profundity of the work that I do, which I take seriously, joyfully. And yeah, examples are things like clients changing their work status so that they can go part-time working, clients who have been approached by Vogue before they've even launched their business to do a 2-page spread, clients who came to me in the midst of very acrimonious divorces and turned that around, much to their disbelief, turned that around so that they not only got a happy divorce, but also shifted their relationship with their ex-partners so that they become friends and have a very good relationship going forward. Total life transformations for people moving from jobs that they really hate to launching their own businesses that just go gangbusters, straight away. Overcoming depression after, in 8 weeks. I help clients do that. And also healing decades old diseases as well for clients. So, the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me some of one of the things I'm really interested in is to know what training you did after that initial meditation session. So I suppose there's two questions in that. The first is, what was then your transition from the law into creating your own business? And then the second part of that is, what training did you do and who did you work with, and what were some of the most profound experiences you had in that?
The transition was steady. So, and this is what I recommend for anyone who's looking to make a change in their life, is don't jump out of something that you're not liking, because you'll only jump into the next thing that you don't like, because it's our self that we have to change first before we take action. So for me, it was a slow step, and I transitioned slowly. So I moved out of working in a law firm to setting up my own legal practice and working 3 days a week so that I could study in other modalities. And so I studied in Vedic meditation and mantra. I studied Ayurvedic medicine. So that's holistic medicine. It's the oldest surviving medicine in the world, coming from India. I studied psychosynthesis coaching. I studied energy healing. And I studied with many masters in both the West, but most impactfully in the East, so in India especially, and trained in spirituality, shall we say, which is kind of an umbrella for, the development of my own gifts and talents and my energy body in a way that I could then hold energy with and for other people to allow them to develop their energy bodies. In that transition, there's been some amazing experiences that I've come across and that I've had myself, that if I shared them today, no one would believe. I mean, you can't make up some of the things that I've experienced. But having said that, the most amazing things that I've experienced in all of that is seeing the miraculous happen for other people, and seeing people who think something's impossible and helping them make something seemingly impossible completely possible. And that for me is profound in itself, just to be able to watch people grow and get their wings and start flying and really blazing in life. That for me is just quite incredible. I did take a retreat once to Uluru in the outback of Australia, and we just so happened to be there at the same time as His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I just so happened to be in the press kit when they were doing press interviews. I don't even know how that ended up. And then I just so happened to meet and speak to His Holiness's brother, and I gave him a photograph of my spiritual teacher, and then our group got to meet His Holiness personally and have some time with him personally. And he took my hand as we were all lined up, and he took my hand as he walked past, and it was like having a shot of love flow up through my hand, up my arm, and into my heart, and I burst out crying. And I just received a massive blessing from him. And, I felt incredibly blessed. And I feel like, my life is incredibly blessed with the amazing teachers that I've had in my life, that I've had the grace and the blessings to have received, in the knowledge that it's my responsibility to give that back and pass it on.
Mm-hmm. Can we go right back to the beginning? So where did you grow up? And can you tell me a bit about your childhood?
Sure. Born and bred in Yorkshire, not that you would tell from my accent.
I'm sure you can do a good Yorkshire accent if I ask you to.
I'm not going to do it today. And from an immigrant family. So my father was Greek Cypriot and my mother is half Polish, half English. And so very working class, a very normal upbringing in Yorkshire, and very influenced by my grandparents on my mum's side. So my grandmother was a matriarch and a stalwart, and she raised 9 kids and at the same time became qualified as an auxiliary nurse in the A&E department of the local hospital, and became quite renowned for her generosity, her love and her care, and volunteered for Lifeline, and later in her life took pilgrimages every year to Lourdes in France, after initially taking my brother when he was 9 years old and had terminal cancer. She took him to Lourdes, and he came back from Lourdes completely clear of cancer.
Wow.
And yes, and it was a miracle. They wanted to write about it, and my grandma said, we don't really want the fuss, but he literally came back and it had all gone, and it was in his bones, and they'd given him 3 months to live.
That is incredible.
Yes, so that was one of the first miracles, that I'd experienced. I was 8, so I didn't know the magnitude of what was going on. I knew he was ill, but I didn't know how bad it was. And that was a defining moment in my life, a defining time in my life, and also my grandmother's, because every year after then, she had promised to take people back if he got cured, and he was cured. And she did it anyway because she loved helping people. And she would take the very sick people to Lourdes every year after that until the day that she passed. So she was an incredible force of nature. And, she was loving and kind to everyone and strong and courageous.
And she was she English or Polish?
She was English. And then my grandfather, who was Polish, from Poland, he had been imprisoned by the Germans, and he escaped and went to fight for the British. And he was a doctor in Poland, and he ended up taking refuge in England, and that's where he met my grandma. And he ended up being a miner and working down the mines for the rest of his life. So, he was an amazing, amazing man, very intellectual, very loving, very open-hearted and generous. So the two of them were real role models for me in life. How did he
deal with working down the mines from having been a doctor?
He was so humble. He just took it all in his stride and did what he needed to do, and never once complained. I never once heard him complain. He was just a very loving, big, jolly, generous man who loved his family and would do anything for his family. So they, the two of those helped me with my courage. They helped me learn to serve others, do good by others, treat everyone equally, stay humble, all those really good value qualities. And having experienced a childhood where I come from a family of domestic violence. So that was really hard. I really struggled as a kid going through that, and having the secrecy of that, because you couldn't tell anyone. And coping with that and having to deal with that at the same time as, my brother having cancer when he was 9, and then my little brother being born at the same time that my older brother was had the cancer. There was a lot going on in my childhood. And I think that really drove me to excel so that I would, we all adapt when we're having traumas. And my adaptation was, if I excel, not consciously, but unconsciously, then I can take away some of the vision of what was going on inside the family and make everything better and, try and control the direction of my life. And yeah, so that was my kind of history. And I think that was the birthing of me, being driven and excelling at school and excelling at everything that I do and being very driven and ambitious.
Mm. And how were your grandparents aware of the domestic violence?
Yes, they were. Yes. Mm.
And were they able to intervene or to help? Or?
They did as much as they could. But, at the end of the day, when people are married and they make marriage vows, and some people take those marriage vows very seriously. And I know that my mum did. And so, I used to think that my mum was a victim. And when I look back now, I see that my mum was the most courageous woman I've ever known.
Mm. Mm. And what was your relationship with your mother like?
Always good, always had a lovely, beautiful relationship with my mum, still do today. Would do anything for her, and the same the other way. I feel very fortunate. I believe that all mums were like that until I started doing the work that I do and realized, wow, I was actually very blessed to have a mother who loves me, supports me, even though she might not understand everything that I do or follow my belief systems. She still supports me, and I couldn't ask for any more than that. And she loves me unconditionally. I mean, can't ask for any more.
Mm. So you've had two very strong women role models in your life.
Yes, absolutely. And in the rest of my larger family, I hail from a huge family. So huge family in England, huge family in Cyprus. And all the women are really the matriarchs of their families, and it's the women that get everything done. It's the women that go to work. It's the women that look after the kids. So very strong female role models. Mm.
And has that driven your desire to work more with women?
I would say yes, definitely. And also it's been a very natural development and evolution for me in terms of women are naturally drawn to the work that I do. Interestingly, it was a big transition for me to move from a very male-dominated masculine world into a very different feminine world of mentoring and spirituality and healing and transformation and moving into my own femininity. So I had to make that transition for myself first, because I became very male and very masculine through my work as a lawyer. No one told me to. I did that myself. So I'm not blaming anyone, but I wore flat boots, trouser suits, cut my hair short. I would cuss a lot and pretend like I was one of the guys. And I unconsciously believed that that's what I needed to do to succeed in that profession. But it was to the detriment of who I really am, and particularly my femininity, and my female intuition and my woman skills. And so, a lot of the people who come to me are in a similar position and are looking for that same reclamation of their femininity as well.
I've got a couple of questions in that. One is, I wonder how different men and women are fundamentally, and how different, whether it's been socialized into them. And I wonder if men were able to express the more feminine side of themselves, if perhaps the world would be a better place.
Yeah, such a great question. And absolutely, it would make the world a better place. And a big part of the work that I do is helping men and women realize that our issues and challenges that we're facing today and in society have got nothing to do with gender equality. It's everything to do with the equality that we have inside of us. So if we can reconcile our inner masculine and our inner feminine, whether we're male or female or other genders, then that is when we become empowered, and that is when we can become an inspiring leader to others. So it's that reconciliation and integration of our inner masculine and feminine, and that's available for everyone. And unfortunately, in the West, it is educated and cultured out of us, and we are separated as genders. And so we're taught to have gender preferences and taught to behave in a certain way. And men typically are taught that they are allowed to have anger as an emotion, but not any other emotion. And women are typically taught to have sadness as an emotion, but not really anger. It's inappropriate for a woman to be angry. And so a lot of my female clients have a lot of suppressed anger that we have to work through and release. And that's really tough because as women, we're labeled as, some crazy hysterical women if we are getting in touch with our emotions. And so it's definitely conditioning that we have to work through. And that takes a little bit of time. It takes also some trust, and it takes a safe environment for women to feel comfortable enough to do that.
And do you feel as though workplaces are changing? That there is, because I've got a very similar background to you. So I've been in, and I am in workplaces where it's very much the male way of being, which is the acceptable way of being. Do you feel that things are changing, and how do you think? What do you think it would take for things to change in our workplaces?
I think things are definitely changing. Is it fast enough? It will never be fast enough, but things do change slowly. So there is a process of change that we have to ensure so that we don't have chaos or crisis. And slowly but surely, though, more women are starting to realize that they have certain skills that are natural, like their intuition and their creativity, that it's okay for them to bring to the workplace. And I say intuition rather than emotional intelligence because that's the male view of what that is. And it's not emotional intelligence. It's not something outside of us. It's this inner wisdom and inner knowing that we have, particularly as women. Everyone has it, but women are more predisposed to it. And recently I had a client who she works for a very large tech company, shall we say, not naming any names. And they were talking about leaving emotions at the door when it comes to their big strategies and big plans. And she had the courage to speak up and interrupt, the big cheesers who were all male and say, actually, sorry, can I interrupt? And I'd like to say that it's really important that we bring the heart into what we do, especially technology. And I was just so proud of her courage. And she said to me that all the women that were on the meeting were texting her saying, that's just what I was thinking. Thank you so much. And so slowly, as women start coming forward in the workplace and trusting their intuition and speaking up, other women are coming forth as well. So we're all helping each other. It's like all boats rising.
Mm. I remember there was an incident in my work where there was a woman who was in her 40s who had a terrible accident and been killed. And they were thinking at work of not doing anything because they were afraid that people might cry. And so I sent an email and said, well, actually, I think it's incredibly important. So eventually they did. But it's that same thing of emotion being scary.
Yes. And that's one of the key things for anyone who's wanting to improve their working life, if they're in an organization, is to understand that having emotions at work isn't the problem. It's not knowing how to manage them properly. And if everyone was taught how to manage and master their emotions, which is a big part of the work I do with corporates and leaders and execs, is how to master your emotions so they're not taking over, so they're not acting by themselves, or, as lawyers would say, going off on a frolic of their own, but are completely managed by the self, by our bigger self, our greater self, then we bring way more skills and way more capacity to the workplace and to the work that we're doing, and infinitely more creativity and potential. And it's that's missing in the corporate workplace. And there's a potential for it to go even more that way with technology, with the rapid advancement of technology. So it's so important that we bring the heart into technology and AI, and we can't stop that. That's the age that we're living in. We're living in an age of technology. And it's important that we bring the heart into that as well, and our humanity, and remembering that. And to do that, we have to be able to master our emotions.
Mm. And with the clients that come to see you, do you see common themes? Are there challenges that are coming up every time or most times for your clients?
Yes, it's always the same themes, and it's always around not knowing how to, and this is nobody's fault because we're not taught this at school, not knowing how to manage the business of the self. And that includes our mindset, our emotions, our physical body, understanding what's best to eat and what's best to do exercise, and how to manage our energy, and our energy body, and how we manage our energy body. The fact that we've got an energy body, that's not spoken about in the West. But when you go to the East, everyone knows you have chakras or energy centers, you have an aura. And that's just the norm in the East. But in the West, everyone's terrified of it. And, part of the work I do is helping people understand that that's just part of your natural anatomy. And that if you can start to master that and clean it up and boot it up in a way that it's working for you rather than against you, then you can do anything. You literally can do anything.
Mm-hmm. What would be the bravest thing you've ever done?
Accepting a human birth. Mm-hmm. Getting up every day when all I wanted to do was let go of life in my darkest times. Deciding to sell my house, my home, and completely turn my back on law after spending 9 years studying it and 3 years trying to get into it, and another decade or so of working in it, to do something that I had no idea what I was going into. I had no certainty. I really didn't have a plan. I just took a leap of faith and did it. To things like writing my book, because it's me pouring my heart out at its rawest, at its most authentic into the world, that's open and vulnerable for anyone to read and see. Those kinds of things, and just being outed by people about my spirituality and my beliefs, and just being honest and open about what I do and who I am, which is the hardest thing really for everyone who comes to work for me. So with me, so I have to do it myself so that I'm a teacher and not a preacher. And then I'm an eternal student as well. So I'm always learning and growing and evolving.
And do you find it easier and easier to be brave and to be vulnerable now? Or does it stay hard?
I think I would say the lessons get harder, like the stakes get higher and the mountain gets pointier. However, you have the skills to walk more confidently and courageously towards your destiny, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell me about the Green Shakti project you're working on at the moment?
Yes, Green Shakti is a not-for-profit environmental charity that grows and plants trees and manages tons of waste each year with its zero waste management projects and creates environmental awareness through education programs. They're based in South India, and it is one of the charities established by my spiritual teacher over in India at her ashram. And they have a current project to plant 5 million trees by raising money and awareness across the globe. And there's currently a global team involved helping spread the word, helping fundraising. And I'm offering daily mentoring videos on all of my social media platforms on a wide range of topics that I would normally reserve for clients. So I'm offering free guidance, really, and mentoring online every day for the whole year of my 50th birthday, 50. In celebration of that, in celebration of my coming of age as a wise woman, and in celebration of the fact that Mother Earth gives resources to every single part of life, that there's no resources get trucked in for Mother Earth. And so we have to honor and respect her as custodians rather than people who take from her and not replace. And so really bringing that kind of awareness to people, and the awareness that if we want to receive things in life, we must give. We must give what we want to receive, and we must respect our Mother Earth, and we must respect each other in order for us to succeed individually and collectively. And so I pledged to raise $50,000 towards that. It won't, plant the 5 million, but it's my donation towards it. And I'm asking for people to contribute towards or join our team, or even just share the messages so that we can get this out to a lot of people. And I've been finding out that there are so many amazing people raising money and awareness for the planting of trees and the environment. And it's so heartening to, see that and know that that exists as well, because often we just get fed the negative stuff, and it's really heartening to know that there are many people planting trillions of trees around the world, and it's very much needed. So that's what kind of why I'm doing it.
The two questions I usually ask to finish these interviews are, what has it been to you, meant to you being a woman? Is the first question.
In the early parts of my life, I literally rejected the fact that I was a woman, interestingly. I was very much a tomboy. I grew up very close to my dad and my older brother, and I would do boy stuff. And I was very much a tomboy. And then working in a very male-dominated environment exacerbated that. And I had all male friends. I didn't have any female friends. So for me, becoming a woman was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, which may sound strange. And it sounds strange to the people who know me now, but the people who knew me back then can see the transformation that's happened in me, and the acceptance of my womanhood, my intuition, my creativity, my inner knowing, my wisdom, and all that we carry, even though I've never had kids, and working through all of that in terms of, you don't have children, but you're still a woman, you're still a mother to many people in your life, you're still a sister, you're still an auntie to many people in your life, and embracing that role in society. So it's, for me today, it's a privilege to call myself a woman, and it's an honor. And I'm really enjoying collaborating with other very, powerful, in their power, empowered women who are just blazing a trail, and who are all about collaborating and helping other women, supporting other women, collaborating with other women. And that's a real joy to me.
No, I love that. I really love that. And I love that message. And the last question I'd like to ask is, if you had a message for the people who are listening, what would that be?
I would say this life is an extraordinary miracle, and it serves us well to really remember that, get back in touch with that, and play all out, leave nothing unsaid, leave nothing unturned, and leave nothing undiscovered, and inspire others around you to contribute positively to the world and leave the world a better place than what we find it in. And in that way, imagine if everyone did that, it would be such a different world.
Mm. It's been just such a pleasure for me to spend this time with you and to hear your story and to see the courage that you've had to go from such a different childhood then into one of the major law firms in the world, and then into the work that you are doing now. I think that's taken huge courage, and I just want to acknowledge that the courage that's taken you and the courage to follow what you feel is right, even though it's not what other people around you are thinking. You've just said, well, this is what is right for me, so that's what I'm going to do. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the courage that you've had in doing that. So thank you.
Thank you. And I will say the same for you as well. The courage that it takes for you to do these podcasts and, put yourself out there. And it's a privilege to be interviewed by you today. It really is. So thank you very much.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brave New Women. Certain podcast sites such as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Podchaser let you leave a rating and a review. The more ratings and reviews we get, the more people will listen and the more these women's stories will be shared. So I'd really appreciate it if you could. Thanks for listening.